Hello, and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed, and we are reading Plato's Phaedo to better understand what exactly is philosophy. What is philosophy? What is Socrates' doctrine of philosophy? And specifically, we've seen so far that it involves a kind of yoga, a practice of the separation of the soul from our body, which Socrates is calling death. Obviously, it's dying. And it's the art and practice of that is philosophy, which is a puzzling thing, but not so puzzling if we recognize there's a difference between philosophy, real philosophy, which seeks to understand and directly apprehend the realm of being, which has a hypothesis called self-ousia, and of course to develop the logos and dialectic to reach that, and also to maybe even go beyond that. That's a puzzle we have. If we can distinguish that kind of philosophy from the philosophy of the physical world, only the physical world exists, and the various kinds of opinions on how to live in the physical world based on there only being a physical world. Of course, if there's a realm of being which we can apprehend and is the paradigm for justice and beauty and the good, then it would not be a contentious statement to say understanding that and verifying that understanding in direct experience is necessary. Whatever your philosophy is, whatever your personal philosophy is, if by definition it's going to be based around what you consider to be good, then you would have to first understand the good. So if there is this realm of being that is the good, the experience of the good, and the paradigm for things that are good, like justice and beauty, then your philosophy would have to include having that and acting according to that. And if this is a realm of reality that we encounter when we die, your philosophy would have to acknowledge the fact that we live in a human form for a certain amount of time, and we die. Meaning, if we go to that realm, your philosophy, to be a rational philosophy, would have to include a kind of learning and preparation for that experience, not just in this life, but in the next. Bringing in the idea of reincarnation. What is reincarnation? How do we understand that? And how can we live the best kind of life to have the best kind of reincarnation? So these are all things that follow if the realm of being exists and one wants to develop a philosophy. And what we can see about them is it's not many. This is what would rationally follow if this exists, if the realm of being exists, if our soul is immortal, and if there was a living and dying cyclical process which we call reincarnation. It has to. But if it doesn't exist, and there is no knowledge, there is no dianoia understanding of the realm of being, and all we have is personal opinions based on our physical senses, then you get a manyness in philosophy. Then you get the idea that philosophy is eclectic. It's pick and choose. It's a pick and mix. I like that idea. I like that idea. That sounds like what my dad said to me. I'll take that one. Oh, my mum is a saint. She would always say this, so I'll take that. And I was raised in this religion, and my religion teaches me that. I'll take this. And we live in this century, so we all say this, so I'll pick that. And to be a philosopher is to do that. But in our modern age, this is the manyness of philosophy, is to do that very thing, but you use big words, more or less. This is Epicureanism. This is Stoicism. This is Oh goodness, I'm trying to think of all of the big names that I had to memorize for college. A materialist realism. It doesn't matter. Because it's what follows if being doesn't exist, if truth doesn't exist, and all we have is access to opinions. In our reading in the Phaedo, Socrates is distinguishing that from real philosophy, true philosophy. And he's also pointing out, hey, considering that it's the separation of the soul from the body in order to verify our understanding of truth, being, it's also the true mystic tradition. There are many people calling themselves mystics. There are many people who carry the staff, but few are the actual mystics. And those are those who practice philosophy correctly. That's such a great line. I think we should have had it as a quote. Let me pull it up. Do we have that as a quote? Yes, we do. Many are the staff bearers, but few are the inspired mystics. These are, according to my opinion, none other than those who have practiced philosophy correctly. Socrates 69c is the Stephanus number of that. So, philosophy is the single way of understanding and the single mystic tradition, according to Socrates. But because of the work that we've been doing in reading the text together and applying that in our own exercises of the dialectic and applying it to our own lives, we are not just having to believe his opinion, we are seeing why it must necessarily follow, which is the one of the stages of the dialectic. The third stage, the division stage, others to others. What are the implications of what follows, of what we've defined and demonstrated, whether it is and whether it isn't? And what are the absurdities or the contradictions or the harm that follows if it doesn't? And if it does exist, is there a necessity and is there a beauty in the logos that follows? And are there balloons? So this is what we were discussing and exploring in a previous episode where we talked about thumbs up. What should change our minds? And we talked about how this understanding of the dialectic, how to thumbs up again, how to change our minds or how to determine whether a theory is valid or not is necessary, because not only does it help us grow, it also gives us the model or the paradigm to determine why hypocrisy is bad. In our present world, the people who have positions of leadership and authority don't seem to bat an eyelid at their hypocrisy. Just because it's pop culture, both sides of the American political party, but pretty much all political systems in Australia too, there's a lot of insider trading and corruption for personal profit of the politicians, and while themselves passing laws to imprison others for doing the very same thing they're doing, which is hypocrisy. But that's been happening for a long time, cutting the amount of wages for everybody else while at the same time increasing their own. This has just been standard operating. It's business as usual, standard operating procedure. But with a dialectic, we can point out, oh, by the way, that's hypocrisy. There is an inherent contradiction, which means your principle that you are acting on and ruling on, upon which you have said that you qualify for leadership, you should be a master because you have the apprehension and can use these principles. That principle is false. Demonstrate not by opinion, not by vote, but by fact. Not only is it false, we have to accept that it's false, because the dialectic, the functioning of the logos, makes us rational, solves our problems, and and helps us to, well, is what can lead us to our highest goal. So if we abandon that, if we abandon looking at the cause of hypocrisy and understanding that it demonstrates a false principle, we've abandoned anything. We've abandoned humanity. We've abandoned our place within the cosmos. Because we have no way of solving problems. And thus the continual corruption, genocide, murder, exploitation of humans and the planet will continue until our inevitable destruction, which, because of the technology we have, can be very, very soon. And because of the state of our environment also will be very, very soon. If we abandon the logos and the dialectic, that's what will happen. But also we will abandon that which we need to reach our highest excellence. Philosophy isn't just about purifying our problems, it's about perfecting ourselves to live our best life, to experience the best states of mind, to gain the highest knowledge, to benefit ourselves and our fellow men in the highest way, to take part in a great system of justice that includes humanity, but it also goes beyond humanity. This is the exciting stuff that we will lose if the dialectic is abandoned, and if we therefore allow corruption, hypocrisy, irrationality to exist. So we did a dialectic on the dialectic in one of our previous episodes. This is what happens if the dialectic is taught. This is what happens if it isn't. And likewise, we did one on philosophy. What if being doesn't exist? Or what if philosophy does not exist? And existence, remember, means exists eternally in being. So that's what our conversation today has been about. The fact that if being exists, and therefore if philosophy is about existence, there is one. If not, if it doesn't exist, if philosophy is not an eternal and immortal principle, understandable through dianoia, accessible through the personal growth journey of logos through dialectic, is fundamentally about the self, because last time we talked about how the logos and dialectic is applied to our highest goal, which is to do with the self. And in Greek, the word self means highest goal. It means honorific, allowing for that upward or anagogic movement. If that didn't exist, if there wasn't being that has as one of its aspects the logos and is therefore apprehendable, then we would have many philosophies. Is philosophy one or many? Is it about bringing everybody up to that which is universally accessible to all those who have language, mind, and self-reflection, the three big aspects of the self, the three kinds of excellences? Or is it many, and it's about division, us versus them, being able to debate, being able to use power over others to enforce your own personal opinions, giving a multitude of different philosophies. This is my philosophy. This is my Aunt Mary's philosophy. This is Crazy Joe's philosophy. This is my drunk Uncle Bob's philosophy. And who's to say what's right or wrong? Hey, just vote for whoever and just hope it all works out, that kind of thing. Which points to one of the things that follow from that is the idea that we accept in our society that everybody is entitled to their own ignorance. There is no problems that result from people having fundamentally ignorant false beliefs about themselves and reality. Surely no harm will come of that, which of course is an absurd belief, but we can see the cause of it. Philosophy not existing. That would have to follow in order to justify a multitude of different false opinions, many of which are causing great harm and have done for a long time. In order for that to be allowable, we'd have to say, well, there is no philosophy. It's just whatever you want. So Socrates is giving us what we need to discover that for ourselves. He didn't lay it out. Hey, by the way, this is my last day. Let me outline everything. No. He said, hey, let me give you something to work on because you are on a quest.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
And we have that sound drop. So we are discovering it for ourselves, and there's something special about that. This isn't a textbook where you cram information into your brain. We are excited about this. We are, if you're following along, you're probably yourself excited about the fact that we can understand our problems, we can understand ourselves, and we can reach higher states of feeling, higher states of consciousness, higher states of mind, and we can function better with a more accurate way of seeing the world. This is exciting. This is the thing that people often do first year psychology and philosophy for. They hope for this. It's what draws people to Eastern spiritual traditions. It's exciting that we have this in philosophy, but in order for it to affect you, we have to do something. We have to play the game. You don't turn on a video game and have the ending credits straight away. You have to do something in order for it to affect you in that way, to have all of those things that drew you to philosophy, basically leveling up, and we have the sound effect for leveling up your state of consciousness and your understanding, both of which together allow for a way of functioning in which you can greatly benefit yourself and others in this life and in the next. In order for that to happen, for it to change you, we have to do something. So that's what we're seeing about how Socrates functioned. Early in the text, we had, should we bring it up? One of the very first questions, right the way at the beginning, it was asked, what was Socrates? So we have Socrates, who meets Phaedo. Phaedo was there. And said, hey, were you there, Phaedo, when Socrates was put to death? And he said, what were his logos and what were his deeds? And what was his self-death? So we had a nice triad there. What was his logos and what was his deeds? And of course, in what way did he die? Because that's fundamental to philosophy and our lives. So we are seeing in Socrates' deeds, that was, for those reading along the text, it was, let me bring it up actually. I have this button. Here we go. Page 2, 58D. Socrates asks of Phaedo, but then what about the details pertaining to the self-death, O Phaedo? What were the logos and deeds? And who was present of the followers? And did he die with his friends around him? So we're seeing more about his deeds. His deed was to leave us this. Not the answers, but the material that we can exercise our own selves on and with. To discover these things. To discover we live in an understandable world. To discover we live in a knowable reality. To discover that what we need to discover individually and collectively to move from the manyness to the one. From the division to the unified. Last time, so we're talking today about how philosophy would therefore be one, and we are learning it. But also we're learning how to understand and recognize and understand what is not philosophy, which is basically a manyness. Oh, you're of the camp where you don't think philosophy exists, but you give the word philosophy to personal opinions. It doesn't exist eternally and immortally the way philosophy uses the word exist. So you think it's just an opinion, and that's what philosophy is. By the way, these are the implications that follow. You're going to lack what you need to understand and remove problems. You're going to lack what you need to develop up the hierarchy of the logos, situated as a ladder, the logos and dialectic as the ladder of development. You are not going to learn that which we call phronesis, which is a kind of learning which takes this development, combines it with the virtues, because we're not only learning this, we're practicing it, which is the virtues, to level up, and can we press this noise? To level up into a kind of learning which will not lose its power, and therefore the learning that can last beyond this lifetime. So not only will you negatively affect this life, but your incarnations, your next incarnation. Not only that, we saw by doing a dialectic on the virtues, reflection on the virtues, we saw that the virtues without philosophy cause our vices. We've seen this. And we saw what made the difference: the logos and the dialectic directed to being, self-being, made all the difference for all of the virtues. Without it, you're mastering some pleasures to be mastered by others. You're going to get better at being a tyrant. You have a kind of shadow of wisdom, which again, if there's a consequence to our lifetime, which we're learning in the Phaedo there is, it's not going to harm ourselves and those which we have influence over in this life, but will have a negative influence on our incarnations in our next life. We don't want to do that. So isn't it fun? Isn't it cool that this is understandable? And of course, the three big questions that Dr. Pierre Grimes would always say, it's strange talking about him in the past tense now. Where did we come from? Where are we going? What should we be doing while we're here? The three questions that make us rational, that's needed to be asked to enter the human race, to go from the barbarian to the human. We can answer that because Socrates is showing us that it is indeed understandable. We can ask these questions. We don't have to pretend that they don't exist. To be polite to those before us who acted as though they didn't, or out of fear of retribution from those boomers, not boomers, from those people attached to their ignorance, taught to fear understanding. We don't have to play that game. We can understand and we can ask those fundamental questions. That's why philosophy is so cool. It makes it so simple. Not only that, last time we saw that this applies to everything. So this understanding of this fundamental principle of going from a manyness. I have to bring my pen to the side of the screen. What's going on? Okay. So this principle that we were just talking about, moving from a manyness to a oneness, from a examples to a the substantive, from adjective to a noun, many ways of saying it, which is also fun, by the way. That's one of the other fun things about philosophy. Once you see it, you can have fun in the ways in which you express it. So philosophy is a lot of fun in that way. Well, we talked about what is that principle? Well, right now we were talking about what makes the many philosophies, the opinions, the shadow of philosophy, not real philosophy, of course. What makes them what is it? What are they missing that takes us from opinions to truth? Well, what is the distinguishing feature? We are learning it's the self-logos and the dialectic together. Applied to what? This was key. In the virtues, we saw that Not only is it having an understanding, but it's applying it to being. But also keeping in mind that all of the things that we learn in being are of the self. If being exists, we have a single philosophy. Necessarily so. Why? Well, if being is that which contains goodness, then any philosophy you would be making the claim is right because it's good. And if being is the paradigm for truth, what is true, what is real, ultimately, then you wouldn't want your philosophy to be a con or a lie. You'd be making the claim that my personal philosophy is the true philosophy. If it's going to be beneficial to have your philosophy, you'd have to see that it's good and can lead to the good. So whatever your philosophy is, if being exists, it has to necessarily have self-logos and dialectic applied to being and the recognition that this is the highest and it is of self. So we can take that and we can apply it to all of them. All of what? Anything we're interested in. Hey, what's the cause of problem? Is it us versus them ways of thinking? Is this conflict? Us versus them? Pick a conflict. Is it us versus them? What do we want? Oh, we want a way of getting unity. How do we get that? Well, self-logos plus dialectic applied to self-being. Does that work? Does this hypothesis that we have in our hypothesis stack, does it work? What did we realize when we went through the dialectic using the self-logos about the soul? With Socrates in the Phaedo, what did we just see in our last reading? Well, Socrates said, by the way, this self-being unifies all of the beings. And you could apply that to the hyparxis, call that a hyparxis. You could say all cells, all souls have a hyparxis too in a single self-soul. Is that a way that would unify everyone? By recognizing we are all of the same soul? He also said that all physical things have a purpose to reach self-equal, which is the same as self-being or self-usia. And so that's their own personal goal. Everything, even sticks, reach out to that. But also they have another purpose. By using our physical senses to see equal sticks, we wonder, we are directed to our own quest, which is the same. So we can only begin our philosophical quest by looking at the manyness, going back here, looking at the many examples of equal sticks, or seeing how many people look at the same equal sticks differently. And then asking the question, what is equality itself? Seeing many beautiful people and saying, what is beauty itself? What is justice itself? So every physical thing has its own individual goal to reach this hyparxis, self-being, self-usia, but also has another purpose to trigger the learning of us. So, and by the way, if that's the same goal, we can remove other terms like, let's keep going. Let's make some more triangles here. Oh, what's the implication of that? Well, okay, let's move this guy out of the way so we can have more triangles here. So, got some space for some more triangles? Let's make some more triangles. We're doing it in yellow. Let's do this color yellow this time. Another triangle here. Well, what were we just talking about? The many sticks. Oh, right. So, if our goal is to get to self-ousia, even sticks, reach out, yearn for, was the words in the text. But also, they're all the same in that it's they have a purpose to trigger our as human beings, going from the process of forgetting to remembering. We have to look for examples of beauty, look for the many or equal sticks. So their purpose is to help others reach their same goal. Therefore, the idea of being selfish by trying to reach your highest goal, being different from selfless, which is supposed to be good, selfless, which is to help people. But hang on a second, if helping people is to, by definition, help them reach their goal, and they can only do that if they themselves are reaching for the same goal, what do we notice? In order to help others, you have to be helping yourself. So there's conflict of selfish versus selfless. Comes together, you don't have to feel guilty about reaching your highest goals because you're actually helping people by doing it, by definition. You don't have to harm yourself or give up your self goals in order to help others. You don't have to be a Cinderella or a slave. You don't have to be a jerk, bastard, evil, greedy capitalist or whatever. If you're truly reaching your self goals, we can go from selfless versus selfish to self-ousia. Are you in self-ousia? What makes the difference? Well, our hypothesis is moving from this side of the triangle to this side, to the hyparxis, moving from the conflict, the manyness, the unending bloodshed of human history, to unity is simply what Socrates is laying out for us, the self-logos, through the dialectic, applied to self-being. Simple, right? Make that triangle. Self-logos, dialectic, self-being, or self-ousia. Does it fit? Do we unify self-logos and dialectic together when we reach self-being? Is it the same principle? Wow. That's a question. So get rid of this slave language, this barbarian caveman language, replace it with self-ousia. You're being selfish. That's bad. Do what I say. Oh, be selfless and abandon your goals to help me. Sacrifice for king and country. Give the money to the church. To me. The church. Whoops. My gold-plated jet. What? This is the scam. Well, if we recognize that actually what you're seeking, so long as you're seeking your highest goals, which is self-logos and dialectic, the development of that towards self-being, then you're actually doing the best way of helping other people. So instead of saying selfish or selfless, we say, oh, are you self-ousia? Where are you at with your self-ousia? Or where are you stuck? Where are you on the ladder? Where are you on the shadow of the ladder? That's a shadow being cast. See how it's on the ground? And notice how the ladder goes upwards, whereas this doesn't go upwards, it stays stagnant. The shadow of the ladder. Where are you at? Where are you stuck? And we saw how this is the fundamental question that Socrates began with before he used his dialectic with his friend Simmias. Simmias like, oh, I'm stuck. I'm not quite following why the soul has to be immortal. He goes, okay, where are you at? Are you with us? Do you believe us? Do you trust us? He goes, no, I trust you. I'm with you. Like, that's where I'm at. I'm with you. But I'm with you all the way up until where I got stuck, which was the logos of learning as remembering. I'm not as familiar with that as my friend CB's. Okay, that's where you're stuck. That's where we'll start. Let's go through that. So he's using it to help him. By the way, the more Socrates is in self-ousia, with the self-logos and the dialectic, the better he can help. The more he can be what we would all usually call selfless. But he's not selfless. He's very full of self. But he's helping in the greatest way, as he is to us right now, 2,000 years later. 2,500 years almost. So we can't say selfless. Is he being selfish? Well, of course not. He's helping people in the greatest way. But by exercising the dialectic and the self-logos, he is himself remembering and recalling the self-ousia and functioning like a daemon. So he's helping his own self goals. But he's also helping so we can get rid of this. This doesn't make sense. This is a language of, by the way, some people who have shown an interest in non-violent communication, the work of Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, he makes a very similar point. He says he recognizes this is the language of slavery. He says, well, he has the idea that because he uses the language of feelings and needs, one of your needs is to enrich life, to help people. So by meeting your need to help people, you're being selfish. But you're helping people, so you're being selfless. It falls down. But if you are lacking, if you are tired, if you haven't met your needs, it's unlikely you're going to be full enough to meet other people's needs. So we want people to have their needs met. This way of thinking in capitalism, that you have to keep people in constant fear of starvation, otherwise they won't be good slaves, is sick. But it's also irrational, because the more full you are, the more able you are to meet your need to help others. So he goes from selfless and selfish to self-full, which is fine. It's a good insight, but we would take it one step further and say, by the way, to be truly self-full is to be learning the self-logos, which we're doing together on this channel, learning the dialectic, which we're learning, and practicing, which gives you a way of practicing that, applying it to self-being, so we can replace self-full with self-ousia, which is very similar, because self-ousia has that self-reversion, but also has, because it's eternal and immortal, it is full. It doesn't lose its power. But one of the things about self-ousia is it's the cause of our physical world, so it does overflow and help others. But if we recognize that even self-being has a cause, Self-being and if it's intelligent, and if we have the self-logos and dialectic in our back pocket when we reach it, we can not only reflect on ourselves to maintain ourselves, not only overflow to generate and be like Socrates or be like a daemon or be like the demiurgos, the creator god that creates the world of becoming, but we can reflect on our higher cause in the same way we are doing now. We're reflecting on our cause, being the soul. But even the soul or self-usia has a cause. So there's 3 kinds of usia possible from that level. Overflowing, which is Dr. Rosenberg's principle of the overflowing when you're full. But at this level, there is the reason why you're self-overflowing is because you have that eternal power. And of course, there's another kind, reverting upon your higher cause. So a different kind of upward overflowing, you could say. So, there are people who get into philosophy through Dr. Rosenberg's work. I think it's you could say it's philosophy light. It lacks, of course, it's not philosophy because it lacks this. It lacks the fundamental things, but it is, it does recognize some principles that we discover in philosophy. And he tries to share it. He makes it in a way that's accessible to a lot of people. So, yeah, you could say philosophy is an upgrade of Dr. Rosenberg's nonviolent communication. But in a similar way, it's an upgrade from the many different systems to the single one. So it has even more unity than nonviolent communication, in principle. So, all of these are examples of that same principle. As a philosopher, you look at a beautiful stick, an equal stick or a beautiful person, 1, person 2, that's enough for a manyness. What's our purpose? We go from a manyness to a hyparxis or a unity. So we ask the question, well, if it was one beautiful person, here's another beautiful person. This is the symposium, by the way. This structure or process is laid out in the symposium where Socrates talked about one of his earliest spiritual teachers, Diotima, who was a woman, by the way, which is worth pointing out because there's no need for sexism. This is completely inclusive. Socrates' own spiritual teacher was a woman, so there's no need. Anyone can play. There's no need to exclude. So take note. Alpha male podcasts who prey on division, us versus them, sexism. Nope, not in philosophy, my friend. So, 1 beautiful person, 2 beautiful people. What is self-beauty itself? So even a beautiful person. Oh, I see you, beautiful person. Have you ever wondered what your purpose is? To reach beauty itself? By the way, to get there, you have to ask the question, what makes me so beautiful? What makes you so beautiful, beautiful person? Have you wondered? Because you're yearning for self-beauty. Not only that, by being physically beautiful in a way that I can perceive through my senses, you're serving your other purpose, which is to remind others of their purpose to reach self-beauty. Giving me an example, along with another example, I can ask the question, what is beauty itself? How do we get there? We have to recognize self-logos. We have to do a dialectic. What is the cause? Reversion of cause on self-beauty. So we have to use a self-logos with the dialectic, which is itself a structure of the implications that unfold and the return upon the cause. That's the usia-like nature of it. not just on itself, but on a higher cause. The kind of usia we mentioned before, reflecting not only on yourself, but on a higher cause. As well as the, so there's the self-usia on yourself, there's the unfolding, what follows, and then there's the usia which reverts on its higher cause. All three of those usias that we mentioned a few moments ago is inherent in the dialectic too. So we apply that to being. What is being itself? What is the self-beauty itself? Now, we also recognize, we can make another triangle. Oh, by the way, we recognize that this new way of thinking, whoops, we could call the self logos. Let's put the word self up there. Self logos, which involves also the dialectic, and it has the direction, has a certain focus. So you're not focused on pretty shapes and colors. I love that quote. But we're directed towards being itself, beauty itself, usia itself, the realm of being, which involves, of course, what we're learning in the Phaedo, a way of separating ourselves from all parts of the body, all of our physical senses, collecting ourselves together outside the body, while outside the body, staying together, collecting ourselves together out of the body, self by self, a little clue. Self by self. What is he saying? Self by self. Collect yourself together out of the body, self by self. Little clue there. Remaining there for as long as you can and doing it both now and in the future. So there's where we are in the text, also the idea of reincarnation. Stay there even after this incarnation. Might be more fun. Why is it more fun? There's better men than you find here. And better gods, and you'll be like the daemons. You might even find the daemons there, and you can have better conversations in that realm than the sorts of conversations that's going on here by people in their physical world, distracted by shapes and colors, and also distracted by their physical senses, but also distracted by and motivated by their shadow of the dialectic, their problem, their pathologos. So come join the party up there. Of course, the word up is a metaphor. It's not up. It's a different dimension, perceived through different senses. But yeah. So, how do we get to the self-logos? Well, we talked about our human evolution. We start by thinking this is a picture of a cave, by the way. Inside our cave is good. I can trust all the people that I grew up with in this cave. But outside the cave, there are all these things that we don't understand because we haven't yet developed the self-logos, because we're early humans. Saber-toothed tigers, those sorts of things. So anything outside the cave, anything not the same, is bad. So in psychology, they say that's us versus them thinking, or group think, in group, out group. But really, it's inside cave good, outside cave bad. It's a way of solving a problem of how to survive as early humans before we develop the self-logos. But like all problems, it's a solution that no longer applies. So it's not a blame game. Any problem that you have is not a blame game. You must have learned it at some time. It must have been. Even Dr. Marshall Rosenberg talks about this in Nonviolent Communication. As a little fun thing, he talks about all problems or conflicts are applying past strategies that met needs that no longer meet needs. So he uses the feelings, needs, and strategies language. The strategy that you learned to meet a need in the past, and conflicts in relationships are when you get stuck on that strategy. I'm with my girlfriend, let's say. Well, I won't talk about, I don't have a girlfriend right now. You are with your girlfriend, let's say. You say, hey, I want pizza. And she says, no, I don't want pizza. And then you can have a fight about it. Like, I don't want pizza. You always go to pizza. I want to watch a movie. Now, pizza is a strategy to meet a need, while watching a movie is a strategy that she has to meet a need. And Rosenberg pointed out that, hang on a second, if you realize what the need is, why do you want pizza? Is it food? Is it to get out of the house? Is it some excitement? Is it to socialize with other people at the pizza place? And if she identifies the need behind the strategy to watch a movie, is she tired and needs sleep and need rest? Is she bored and wants to get excitement? Let's say she's tired and she needs rest, and he wants pizza to meet a need for food. Well, hang on a second. Order pizza in, make a burger at home. Eat it on the couch, meeting her need for rest and your need for food. If you wanted to go to get pizza to meet a need for excitement, or to socialize, and she wanted to watch a movie because she had a need for excitement, well, then you take those two needs, socializing and her need for excitement, and come up with a new strategy. Don't get stuck on the strategy that had met needs in the past. Develop a new strategy that meets both. And that's a fun game of co-creating a new strategy that you can also socialize in an exciting way. Maybe laser tag. I know. So that's his way of thinking. That's Marshall Rosenberg's system. And we can see some similarities with what we're discovering inherent in reality in the logos. Specifically, that all problems, not just those sorts, all problems are a kind of strategy that met a need in the past that no longer does. So he's pretty much, he nailed it. And so we recognize this good inside cave, good at bad, good inside cave, good outside cave, bad, which is what all fascists and conservatives play on. Conservative means to conserve what you're used to in the cave. Don't progress, don't learn. You personally benefit from a corrupt system, so don't change it, don't progress. So it's conservative versus progressive, which is why, traditionally the conservative parties have very, very rich people, the 1% who benefit from a unjust, corrupt system, and they try and trick the 40% who are easily manipulated to vote against their own interests. And they use that with this way of thinking. Your problems aren't caused by extreme wealth inequality and a corrupt system that is based on that, with no logos. It's because of outside cave bad. That's because of the brown people. It's because of the immigrants. It's because of the women. It's because of not family values anymore. It's because the past was better and the future and development is bad. Make America great again. Go back to the past. Make Germany great again. Of course, it wasn't great in the past. They're preying on this way of thinking based on our evolution. It's a scam. It's a con artist. They're bastards for doing it. Bastards in a tough word. They're acting like jerks. Of course, they themselves would benefit by developing the self-logos. The kind of benefit they're getting is actually not meeting their needs, causing harm to themselves and the world. So not only is it not meeting them needs, and they will be unfulfilled because they lack what they need to remove their fundamental problems, their fundamental anger, because our problem is caused by an injustice we suffered early on. And therefore we have an anger we carry until we address it, and we can only address it through the self-logos and the dialectic. So philosophy is needed to help them and their souls, but also, why live in a terribly unjust world? Why not live in a utopia where everybody's needs could be met because we can? We have the self-logos. We can use our rationality to organize the resources on the planet to meet human needs, so that we would have to do very, very little work and have a lot of free time for philosophy. Why is that not appealing? Well, because of this. Because of an old way of thinking. What is that old way of thinking? To have a strong allegiance to your prejudices, the way that the cave you grew up in. And so what's our problem? It's stagnant. So the problem way of thinking is specifically allegiance to past beliefs in the face of the logos. So it's anti-intellectual, it's anti-logos. There is an anger and fear of the mind. But so what? Can't we learn? Well, here is the trick. See, all fundamental problems have a kind of twist. Christopher Nolan twist in the movie. They have a kind of self-protective mechanism. So yeah, they're self-fulfilling. If you think people different than you are bad, you will treat them in a bad way, and then they will get mad, and then you will interpret that according to your way of thinking and justify, oh, look, see, that brown person I was abusing was mad at me and was violent. See, all brown people are violent. So it's self-confirming, but also it's self-protecting. So why can't we just change? Well, the thing we need to change from is a fierce loyalty to the past. So why can't we change? Because this past way of thinking itself we have a fierce loyalty to. Because we have this bad way of thinking, and that bad way of thinking is a fierce loyalty to the past, then whatever problem we happen to be in, we will have a fierce loyalty to it. So we have a fierce loyalty to an incorrect way of thinking of fierce loyalty. See how it screwed up? See the twist? See how it protects itself? We have a prejudice for our prejudice, you could say. But we have the self-logos. Socrates has left us this. We have language now. We're not stuck in this saber-tooth, like a fear of outside the cave anymore. We've evolved past that. We have the logos now. We have the ability to reflect. We have a mind to reflect on, and we have self-being to reflect. We have the mind to reflect through, and we have self-being to reflect on, and we have the self-logos and dialectic to do it. So this cool little principle here applies to that. And we also saw, you could add another one. We said, by the way, not only does it bring the many philosophies, Latin, a philosophy, to the philosophy, we kind of have a moral imperative once we've heard about this to do it. Why? Well, we saw that the very thing that moves us from, for all of them, from this to this, self-logos and dialectic applied to being, or self-logos and dialectic together understood as dianoia, special kind of understanding applied to being, also is what's needed to create the actual virtues. So we have the vices. So we have our vices. All all the different virtues, if it lacks this, which moves you from the many, from the problems to the unified, from the many to the one, from the divided to the hyparxis, like virtues, we have the many vices. So we need at least 2 different kinds of vices. Well, actually, this is the thing about the vices. There are many. Like, we could have lots of vices. We could have vice 1, vice 2. There are many different vices. I have a friend, if you watch the All About Platonism reading group, you'll recognize my friend Jacob. This is one of the things he really likes, talks about. There are many vices, but there is only one virtue, or one set of virtues, which maybe even become one with phronesis as well. So there are many different vices. You know, there's many different ways people can be terrible, many different ways people can be unjust. And people will use the many different philosophies they have to justify what they're doing. Like right now, there's a terrible genocide, and social media is full of many different people justifying the slaughter of Palestinian people. And they all have their own philosophy. Oh, we can murder them because today someone's saying, well, 1 million Israeli lives has the same value as 1 Palestinian life. So if we have to kill 500 Palestinian children to save 1 Jewish person, that's right. And here is my philosophy to justify this way of thinking. That's their personal injustice or vice. But there are many different people saying many different things. They're less than human. They're all potential terrorists. Because there is some bad people in their group, then they're all to blame. Of course, that doesn't make sense. Like, there are a lot of jerks in my apartment complex or my street or my town, but hey, don't kill me for their injustice. I have no say in how they act. So this there's Hamas exists. There is a terrorist organization. Well, there are many Nazi organizations in America. Does that mean you have to kill every American? Of course not. That's an irrational way of thinking to justify many vices and injustices. Make the brackets a bit bigger. Injustices. So the injustices follow from the vices. And we saw what makes the vices vices lacks the self-logos and dialectic applied to being. So this is why you could say there's a moral imperative after you've discovered this to play the game, to get in the game, to become better, because you're going to act in an unjust way. So let's push it. Let's risk it. This is a fun thing about philosophy. When you've realized that there's a pattern, you can risk it by pushing it into an area you're not aware of and seeing if it works, or seeing if the whole thing falls down. So let's risk it. What about the virtues? There are many virtues. But this will actually make sense of something if this works out. There are many virtues. There is, let's say, what do we call temperance? Sound-mindedness. Oops. Sound-mindedness. That's Socrates or temperance. Keeping it cool. And we have courage. These were the 2 that he picked up in the text, and also the vitality, the energy that comes from courage. So those were the ones he used in the text. He pointed out, hey, by the way, each of them have their shadow, which we just defined here. If they're not, if you are not mastering some of your pleasures so that you can desire the pleasure, the greatest pleasure of bliss, literally it's the greatest pleasure of self-ousia or self-being, which you gain through the mastery of the self-logos and the dialectic, then you're actually got vice. You're mastering some desires to be mastered by others. You're going to be a better alcoholic or a better gambler or something like that. Of course, a lot of talking about alpha podcasts and con artists and just people who market their own personal philosophies. This kind of falls into that category. How do you gain a certain control over yourself so you can get rich, so you can get lots of women? But aren't you just mastering some of your pleasures? So a certain kind of sound-mindedness, a certain kind of self-order within your soul, a certain kind of temperance, only to be better at chasing women, being lecherous, as they say. But isn't that what all of them are about? So this is a strange implication that's full. This is what happens when you risk something. You come to a conclusion that might sound impolite, to suggest that whether or not they're aware of it or whether or not they know they're doing it. Of course, some of these people know that they're doing it. They know that they're like saying, hey, wake up at 3 a.m. and go to the gym so you can, and get on the cash grind so you can get women, as a way of getting people to sign up for their course so they can scam them from money. They don't believe it. They know that they're playing on one desire for their own personal benefit, but some people don't. They think they're being helpful. Of course, this is why we said there's only one philosophy, because if you're being helpful, you have to know what it means, to benefit, to be helpful. Which means you have to know what the good is, or at least have a right opinion or understanding of it, which means there's only one philosophy. We also talked about earlier how there's only one political party, really. If you recognize conservatism is what we just said, to conserve the way it was in the past, don't progress, don't solve problems because I personally benefit from a corrupt system, or for most people, I've been tricked to think that I personally benefit. It's actually the 1% or 0.1%, but actually not even them, because they're still poisoning themselves and destroying their own souls and ending the human race. So everyone loses because we're not progressing. But really, it's this. Inside cave good and outside cave bad. So there's a lot of people who, like famously, there's the Leopards Ate My Face group on Reddit, which is about people who are like, I'm gay, but I want to hate people too. I want to be in the hate group. I want to hate people and feel justified because I'm motivated by this way of thinking. And then they realize, well, hang on a second, you're gay. You're one of those people who is different. So we hate you. And they're like, oh, but the leopard party, the face-eating leopard party that I voted for is eating my face. Leopards ate my face. I can't believe it. We also have a class called Pick Me Girls. Or Pick Me Anybody, it doesn't have to be a girl. Like people who like women who support the conservative sexists, hoping they will be picked. I'm the special one. I think that's also called an Uncle Tom. Hoping that you will be the one, treated good by the fascists. Of course, it never works because it's this. Whoops. So if we recognize the Conservative Party isn't a Conservative Party, it's the Pathologos Party, then you couldn't, in good conscience, say, oh, let's have people vote for that which does harm to everybody. Maybe does some short-term financial benefit to some people at the expense of their soul, expense of their long-term financial benefit, expense of the country, but it's literally destroying them as well as destroying everybody. We wouldn't be able to vote for that which does harm. You wouldn't say, okay, you're in a doctor's office. Do you want the doctor who does medicine well? Or do you want the one that's going to, that knows no medicine at all, is just going to abuse you and harm you and cause your death? You wouldn't be given that option. Whether it's a doctor or a mechanic or an architect. Do you want the architect that's going to make a house that falls down on your family and kills them? No, it was not given an option. So we recognize there isn't a two-party system. But also, progressivism, or the left, if you want to use that two-party system, in-group, out-group terminology, but to be a progressive, as we're seeing, it's the self-logos. Otherwise, even people on the left will act according to their problem because we all have this problem. We are all here to learn. So it's like, hey, if we're all humans, meaning we have this, which is our excellence, which we are here to perfect, and we have this, which is our problems, which are here to purify. This causes our problems, our fate. This leads us to our destiny. Every human being has this. Our question is, okay, what do you want to rule your soul? This is philosophy. What do you want your soul to be ruled by? If it's this one, you have what we call the vices. You are doing harm to yourself, and as Socrates says, if you go to the afterlife, you will be in a barbarous bog. You'll be stuck in the mud, and you won't complete your life, and you have to go through many, many more incarnations of suffering, maybe, until you do. So do you want to be mastered by that? Of course not. As soon as you're aware of this, you would choose the good, because everybody seeks the good. The problem of humanity isn't good versus evil, which is an incorrect way of thinking based on this. Why? Inside cave good, outside cave good bad, or inherently bad by nature, which is the word for evil, which means evil. It's not good versus evil. If we all seek the good, we're just confused about what it is because we haven't learnt the self-logos yet, then everybody seeks the good. So, by definition, that's what it means. That's what the word good means. So as soon as we realize this is why in philosophical midwifery, when we address the past injustice that caused us problems that we're angry about, we tell the truth. We use the self-logos and the dialectic directed towards self-being to answer them. So that, because now when they're doing their injustice, they're going to be more conflicted. Likewise, when we learn this, we have a choice between our ignorance or our development, between being unjust and having vices and having virtue. What would you choose to rule your soul? You would always choose the good one. It's win-win-win. Benefits your soul, it benefits anyone in your sphere, and it benefits your development beyond even this lifetime. It's win-win-win. It's a triangle with win-win-win. So therefore, in the same way we don't allow in a hospital one doctor to be a good doctor, one doctor to be a corrupt, terrible doctor. No, we want all those who have mastership over our body to be acting for the good. That's why we have qualifications and we have, malpractice lawsuits and stuff to take away people who don't act in the good for their patient. We have the Hippocratic Oath. In the same way, it's simple, we can just ask the same thing about our government. Do we want to be ruled by that which does harm, or Like any tradition, that which does good. So we don't have a two-party system. It's a one-party system. Self-logos party. Or rather, like doctors, who has qualified in the self-logos with the dialectic directed towards self-being so that they can function in a masterful way that benefits according to an art which requires knowledge of the good. It's that simple. And if they say, oh, well, I'm a progressive person and I have my idea what's good. It's keeping capitalism, but allowing unions to exist. What? It's better, but it's still not good. Why? We have a standard of good. This is why philosophy is so great, because there is the philosophy, because it is understandable and intelligible, understandable and knowable. We have what we need to go from injustices to justice, our vices to our virtues. So there's many kinds of vices, but there's only one set of virtues. And even within that set of virtues, we could say, okay, we need two. And there are 4 fundamental virtues. And by the way, I think maybe soon we should take a break from the Phaedo to jump into the Republic section on the virtues to nail it down, because we're using it so much. Even after Socrates outlined his doctrine of philosophy, the art and practice of death and dying, he went on to the virtues. He made a point of why we have a moral imperative to do what he's helping us to see. So we've been using a lot of virtues. And he said, by the way, there is a single currency for which we trade the many virtues that we put in through practice and habit, repeating this doctrine to our friends, to ourselves. And he calls that, let's jump into the text and make sure we get it right. So currency. No, too many R's. Here we go. That which is the only valid currency for which these things must all be necessarily exchanged, phronesis. So we go from being, wisdom, courage, sound-mindedness, and justice. Collectively, the true virtue united with phronesis. So the true virtue is phronesis. He says that's a rite of initiation. And he said, sound-mindedness, justice, virility, which is the state of being and courage, becomes self-mindfulness instead of wisdom directed towards being. It's self-phronesis towards being. That's an initiation, making it a mystical rite, making it the true mystical rite. And to do that, you have to be purified and perfected. And by the way, if you are uninitiated when you die and you haven't done your human's work, you will lay outstretched in a barbarous bog when you leave this incarnation. By the way, if you do it, you will find good masters in the other place, as well as good friends. So that's nice. Now I have a jumper on. So we have here this oh, by the way, we want currency, the currency for which we trade the virtues, but also we just read something called, let's go, mindfulness. wow, it's mentioned a lot. Okay, about where we are. So here we have page 41. By the way, you can get the text for free. There's a link underneath the video. Also a link to the Twitch stream if you want to read along in real time. And also a link to the Patreon. Hopefully will be up by the time you visit this video. Just allowing people who want to support this channel, help it continue, setting up a Patreon, and there's actually a Discord link. You can join the Discord too for free. And we're trying to find ways of keeping this channel self-sustaining for those who are interested in it. And there might be some extra benefits to people who sign up, maybe getting the videos on the same day before early access to these videos before they go up on YouTube. Also access to personal dream analysis if people are open to that. It might be a good idea to make the dream analysis one-on-one for a while rather than to share publicly, because while dream analysis is universal, some people might feel more comfortable talking about the specific details of their personal problems privately. So in order to facilitate that, we are setting up a Patreon. So people who are interested in help with dream analysis, or which is nothing other than exercising the self-logos and dialectic that they're learning. So they have to be in the game. Otherwise, I mean, they wouldn't be here. They wouldn't know about it if they weren't in this game. But it's an opportunity to exercise your self-dialectic, self-logos and dialectic learning on your dreams to uncover information and guidance about where you're at on the ladder up and where you're stuck on your shadow. So, and by the way, if there are any other suggestions or things that the community is interested in, please email me or leave a comment below. We've had some people ask for dream analysis, so this is one way I'm thinking about making it available. Oh, by the way, I've been studying and practicing dream analysis for about 20 years, and I've got a few different qualifications from Dr. Grimes over those years too. So yeah, but it's something that we can all learn, and it's nothing other than practicing the self-logos and dialectic. Dream analysis, of course, is super interesting. Yeah, a lot of fun, and maybe if people have an interest in it, we can do a whole different series on dream analysis itself. It's a lot to see there. Also, people have shown an interest in watch-alongs, in particular the lectures from Dr. Pierre Grimes, of course, and maybe some others too. There are a lot of fun philosophers out there on YouTube that while they may not have awakened the self-logos, maybe getting close, or maybe worth understanding or reflecting on through the self-logos to learn about. A lot of different possibilities for exciting opportunities and possibilities for the channel and the community in the future. But yeah, please, if you are interested or have ideas on how to support the channel, please let me know. I'd be greatly appreciative. So yes, here we have the embalmers in Egypt, wrapping the body up in bandages and with embalming fluid. To keep the body alive for a longer period of time, which may add a different dimension as to why we have mummies. Maybe it wasn't only to do with preserving the body after death, but maybe it could have been used in this yoga. Maybe one can collect oneself out of the body for a longer period of time without worrying about their body decaying too much if their body is prepared in this way. I don't know. That was a puzzle that came up in the chat when we went through this before, but it's a good puzzle to have. So Socrates saying, the soul, which is formless, wings her way to the other realm, that which is noble and pure and formless, as if truly to Hades, the afterlife, in company with the good and phronesis god. So, not only do we talk about there being good masters and friends there, but also the good and phronesis god. So there's something beyond goodness called that good, and maybe something beyond the many gods to that god. That is an interesting puzzle. What would be the good and the phronesis god? Here he says, the self abides in this way. She makes her way to the formless, that which is like self, the divine, the deathless, and the phronesis. Again, phronesis. What the heck is this phronesis? Which upon arriving, self will be a good daemon, having rid the self of ignorance and fear and wild desires and other human defects. That is just as it is concerning the initiates, to truly spend the rest of time with the gods. So again, this idea of escaping the cycle of reincarnation, but also giving us material to do and exercise, our own exercise on the dialectic, on what it's like to be dead, divine, deathless, this puzzling kind of virtue, ultimate virtue, which doesn't lose its power, innate virtue of phronesis. But also you're being like a good daemon. So that's another puzzle. And that takes us back to this upgrade of our modern language from selfless to selfish to self-ousia. Well, if we benefit ourselves by being a good daemon, to be like a good daemon so we can enter this divine deathless realm, to be in the company of the god, not just that god, the good god, not just the good, but the good and the phronesis. I'm being very selfish by helping people, by being a good daemon. But being a good daemon is the epitome of helping others. See how this idea of selfless has nothing to do with helping? It's a freaking con. Nothing to do with helping. It's marketed as helping. The same thing with violence. Violence is only ever marketed as helping. Oh, we help by killing those Palestinians. We help the Israelis, or we help the world by purifying the world from this religion or these people. We help the criminal by making them suffer. We help the student by giving them a detention. It's the only way of justifying violence. But it's always a con. As Socrates says in one of his other dialogues, do you make a horse better by beating a horse? Or do you make someone better by introducing the excellence of that thing? So if the excellence of being a human seems to be something like being a good daemon, which helps, it's not selfless, because it's for your own benefit, but also it is helping. It's the opposite of selfless. It's being self-full. It's being full of the self-ousia. Then we can see this idea of the good daemon really highlighting this. So we can say self-ousia plus good daemon. Which is the most beneficial for us, and also, by definition, that which is most beneficial for others. Which is the Again, self-logos and dialectic applied to being as how you help people, but also how you become a good daemon yourself. Isn't it simple? Isn't it wonderful how the fact that there is one philosophy makes things so simple? And this principle, when you've seen a principle, you can apply it to so many things, making so many normally confusing things very, very simple. This is one of the wonderful things about philosophy. Make clear the simple and obvious. Oh, and it's obvious once you've seen it, by the way. That's another great thing, which is why Socrates is being a good daemon himself. He's giving us what we need to create these diagrams, do these dialectics, discover these puzzles, because when we do it, we see it. And so I encourage you to be making your own if you're watching along with these. Some people watch along while they work or while they're gaming. While you're gaming, do it in your head. While you're working, if it's some menial task, then create your own dialectics. Pick something you're interested in. What do you know about it so far? Number 1, definition, self itself. What do you know about how it functions? Demonstration. Pick something that you are also interested in that it functions towards. Could be you, could be another idea. Now divide it up, category 3. Now from that activity of division, have you seen something new? Have you seen something significant in that division stage that you can take back with you? So you've gone from self. What can you say about it? How does it function towards something? Now divide it up. What are the many things, many different others that you can talk about it? Now, does something stand out? Did you see something new? Did you come up with a new principle like we've seen here? Now take that principle and apply it back to what you're interested in. Or many things you're interested in. Can you use this new principle to understand another idea you're interested in? That's what we've been doing here. We discovered a principle that we're applying to many different things, and we're getting insight into all of them. We're getting an insight into our language, selfless and selfish, selfless, and actually it's to be a good daemon with self-reseer. Understanding politics, understanding the difference between the way philosophy is taught nowadays compared to what it is. The essence of conflict, the essence of poor reasoning or prejudice. How we can unify a political system. It's not competitive. It's not us versus them. That's the problem way of thinking. It's self-logos. How well is this politician or this politician? How capable and how much of a good daemon can they be? How well have they mastered the self-logos dialectic applied to being? That's it. So simple. Well, it's my belief that a politician needs to... No, we're not interested in belief. That's this way of thinking, belief. Because you'll just believe whatever you're used to from your cave. Same thing with advice. You're going to nod at what you already think and you're going to ignore what's different. So we're seeing it in all of these areas. Oh. Many other staff bearers, few are the inspired mystics. What would it be like to introduce self-logos and dialectic applied to the self-version, the honorific version, self-being? What would it be like to introduce it to Taoism and Buddhism? Now, in my experience, when you try it, there is the counterattack. But we can also use this principle to understand the counterattack. What's the nature of this that we have to move from into the self-logos? It's kind of group think. In group, out group, we call it in psychology, but it's inside cave good, outside cave bad. Which is what? A fierce loyalty and allegiance to what you formerly believed, what you grew up with, what you were taught when you were very young. So if you grew up in any of these traditions, and you say, hey, by the way, what if you added the self, logos, and dialectic to all of the good work that you've done? They might have a fierce loyalty to a rejection of that and therefore get mad. Of course, they're Buddhists, so I mean, they're probably not going to beat you up unless they're Shaolin monk Buddhists, in which case you better start running. They'll do a fly kick in your head. No, hopefully they'll be practicing a good action and something like that, and they won't beat you up, but it's important to understand that it's not information in, information out. We are remembering this. These are truths that we have to remember. But we're human, so we have the counterattack. So it's not just a matter of just introducing truth. It's being artful in the way that you do it. And that's one of the important things that we're learning here. Hey, if Socrates has given us what we need to remember and discover what we need to solve human problems, stop human extinction, help all people wherever they are, then what's the issue? What's the issue here? Shouldn't we just post this on Reddit and then we would have our utopia? See the difficulty? Our puzzle is the human puzzle. Our puzzle isn't just a development up. It's also a purifying ourselves from the bad, but also it's a learning process. We have to learn the dialectic to do both. The human puzzle is a puzzle of how. It's great that the Phaedo has given us this information. It's great that as a community we've been exercising this reflection and we've come to understand how do we solve conflicts between spiritual traditions, between political traditions. How do we clean up the political system? Very, very simply. Not complicated. It's a triangle. It's a very simple shape. It's the simplest two-dimensional shape, I believe. So simple. Which is what philosophy is. It's by definition, if you're at the principle, the cause, what is more causal, you are at what is more simple. In fact, the highest principle is the one self, which is simplicity in itself. And if you're into the Republic, we talked about the noble lie. Before you even begin philosophy, according to the Republic, there's a certain belief you have to carry. And the belief is about the noble lie. What is... not the noble lie, sorry, the veritable lie, the true lie. What is the worst lie, the most fundamental lie? To believe reality is anything other than simple? One of the aspects is simple. The one self, the most simple, simplicity itself. So it's very simple, but it's how do we communicate this? Keeping in mind there is a self-protecting counterattack. Keeping in mind we have to go through a process of learning and apply that process to where we're at and where we're stuck, the ladder and the ladder shadow. But on the other hand, it's very heartwarming that it's possible, that it's there. And not only that, the puzzle that we're in, the human puzzle of how we communicate it, is itself understandable. We can understand why that's the puzzle. Socrates was telling the truth back then. Then what's the problem? Why aren't we reading the Phaedo? How do we communicate it? So it's... I don't know, I find it heartwarming to realize that reality is simple and to realize that we can understand problems, but also even the difficult problem of how we communicate the logos. You can understand the puzzle. You can understand the problem. So it's pretty cool. Good clap for that. So back in the text. Right, we reach phronesis, the divine. So we have some good adjectives that you can put into your brain and exercise wherever you're watching. If you're walking, go for a walk and use these words: divine, deathless, good daemon, and phronesis. Use those in your dialectic on what it's like to be dead, or the realm of being, or the one soul. Also, take these other ones, because to do a dialectic, you also have to do SAA, which is if it exists, and SAB if it doesn't exist. What if Spider-Man didn't become an Avenger? So, which is how you would mythologize it. Pick a character you like or a world that you like and mythologize that, or make up your own. That's cool too. So, and what are you going to put in SAB? If you don't have this, if you're not reaching being, if you don't have the self logos dialectic applied to being and reach this state or level of reality, ignorance, fear, wild desires, human defects. Also, initiation. Add that into your SAA. SAB, these are the things that follow if you don't have it, right? Also, stained and impure. Wow, add that to SAB. Beguiled. Oh. So this could be how you would relate to your body. You are beguiled by the desires and pleasures of the body. And also this puzzle that we've got, that we've been carrying, why is the worst problem that you believe nothing else is true other than the physical, which one can touch and see and drink and eat and use for sexual pleasures? Why is that the big problem that follows from the extremes of pleasures and pains? Also, what follows? Yourself according to the logos, others to others, or yourself to others, one of those two categories. You would hate and fear and avoid that which is knowable in philosophy, intelligible and tangible, that which you can see and experience only through philosophy, but you can't see with your eyes, your physical senses. Yeah, we're afraid of the unknown, which may also give us clues into why Simmias and Cebes is asking this question of Socrates. Why do they fear death? Do they fear death? Or he said, can you end my fear of death like you are ending a child's fear of the boogeyman? Because we don't see it. It's dark and formless to our eyes, so we hate and fear and avoid it. Also, we can go back into our own work and say, hang on a second. Could that be this fear of the unknown? Could it also be attached to our evolution? We fear what is unknown outside the cave, especially in our early evolution where it was dark at nighttime and you couldn't see the saber-toothed tigers, but you heard them. Ooh, you heard the wolves howling. Back then, before we had the logos, they would make sounds like this. Scary. Oh my gosh. What's out there in the night? Right? Scary things out in the night. Meow. Oh, what's that noise? Makes you want to go like that. So, we're tying in our own work and our own insights with the text and the logos, while also looking for the clues in the logos, looking for the clues in the text. He's giving us clues. That's interesting too. You take with you, you take into the text your understanding. You're still seeing what's there, looking for the puzzles, what's there, reading the text as it's written, but you also bring with you your level of seeing and the work you've done. So hey, you might do a little dialectic while you're, walking today. Next time you jump into the text, you will realize, hang on a second, I'm seeing this a bit clearer. or I saw something that isn't explicit in the text but actually helps illuminate the text because I did my little dialectic and I realized something. At that stage where it was on being, if being exists, if the soul could exist after death, on SAB, what would happen? Self to others, and the others I'm picking is the logos because I love the logos. I've seen how key the logos is. So I'm doing my little dialectic like this. I'm going, hey, what if? They all start with what if. What if the soul exists? Which means out of body, I was going to say eternally, but and so on. What can I say about it? Use all those words we just mentioned. I'm not going to do it now, because I don't want to spoil your puzzle. The next category is self to other. I've got to pick another other. Well, soul is already self. So what am I going to pick for other? Because dialectic has two things, fundamentally. Two basic things you rub together like sticks. I'm going to make the other the logos. Other equals the logos because I love the logos. I see the significance of the logos. The logos is the most important thing. Hey, we even said that is what makes philosophy and what makes it unified and not many. The logos. So much significance. Okay. Well, over here, he's giving us some material. If you don't, for this SAB, if the soul doesn't exist, then you're stuck and you will remain beguiled by the desires of pleasures of the body. You will think nothing else is true than what you can see and touch and drink and eat and do sex to. But also, how would you relate to the logos? You would hate and fear and avoid. By the way, does that add light to why Socrates, who was just sharing the logos, which benefited everyone, and there are many stories of him benefiting people in his life just through talking with them, dialoguing with them, as well as physical things, of course, like in his military career, he saved some people and whatever. You know, mirroring the life of Dr. Pierre Grimes, of course. War hero, saved a lot of people, many medals helping us stop Hitler, but also significantly helping so many people just through using the dialectic with them. But so Socrates was doing that, and people who are new to philosophy or who are stuck, beguiled by the body, could it explain why they hate and fear and avoided him? More clues to our puzzle. So add this in to your dialectic. Seized by the grip of the corporeal. What a sentence. Seized by the grip of the corporeal. What a bad way of living. You are in service of the body. Who's the master really? Talked about how we talk about shadowy phantoms who are still attached to the physical world and they can't let go and go on to the next realm. They had the similar sort of ghost stories back then even. Okay, talk about the incarnation, become a donkey. If you gluttony, arrogance, and drunkenness, you might come back as a donkey, which is the noise of a donkey. If you hold high esteem injustice and tyranny, which a lot of people do, right? Hey, survival of the fittest, my man. That's the free market, my man. That's how politics works, my man. Hey, if you be a bigger tyrant and get away with it, hey, if you cannot pay taxes, that means you're clever, my man. But what about all of the people in this country who are suffering a cost of living crisis just so some you billionaires who live in the Cayman Islands or whatever can make more billions you won't ever need. Hey, means I'm clever, my man. You'll come back as a wolf. Meow. Or a hawk. Or a kite. That's the noise a kite makes, I think. And then, of course, we asked the question, where do we want to go? And talked about sort of good people who have what we normally call like being a good person. They have kind of sound-mindedness. They're kind of a just person, but they've got there without philosophy. They haven't been, again, what are they missing? They have logos and the dialectic applied to the self version of it or self-being. They can come back they might come back into another human tribe or whatever, or they might come back as a bee or a wasp that a dog would bark at. Dogs bark at bees sometimes. And I need to get more sound effects. Why? Because unless you practice philosophy and become perfectly pure, this purification we've been talking about, by loving learning, philomathesis, there's our math thesis, love learning and practice philosophy in the right way. Oh my God, so many things we should have highlighted before. Not purple. Practice philosophy in the right way. Refrain from the desires that are relating to the body and are steadfast and don't surrender. Not by fear of being poor or fear of getting dishonored, as the ambitious or the money makers do. But really do philosophy in the right way. Do not even walk or talk like them. Go in the opposite direction to the many. Turn to philosophy and accomplish that separation from what's here. The translator used the word deliverance. We talked about that last time. And purification of your soul. Following wherever philosophy leads. And we talked about following the logos being one of the key expressions in philosophy. Follow the logos. Follow where philosophy leads. And we're looking for the state of self. Where is it? Maybe gone past it. This is leading up to where we are in the text, but also we have a question on the board. Is there a... Here we go. So taking all that in our back pocket, just to remind us what our question is. We're risking it. We risked it here and here. We talked about a many to a oneness, but usually we've been talking about negative things to a positive thing, the vices to the virtues. This way of thinking to self-logos way of thinking. The many different philosophies and opinions that cause division and harm and debate, to the single philosophy that can unify everyone. Us versus them to unity. But we also said, oh, hang on a second, beautiful person, that's not negative. If you think it's the most real, it can be negative to your soul, and we're seeing why that's the case. Or we have a question, why is that the case? If you think that beautiful things are the most real, how will that affect your soul and your way of living and your incarnation? And who's in charge of who? Are you really in the master of your body, or is the body mastering you? But it's not necessarily negative, but we want to get to self-beauty. So over here, we're asking the question, okay, we see there are many different vices, but only one set of virtues. There's only one thing, which is, again, it's so cool how it makes it simple, which is one of the virtues. One of the virtues is sound-mindedness or temperance, Socrates. It's the first one, which is to unify your soul. I mean, all of the virtues function to unify your soul, but this is why you can use the word Sophrosune to talk about the other virtues, because it means you unified your soul. Sophrosune means to have the biggest part of your soul, this is the snowman, the middle part of your soul, and the top part of your soul, your belly, heart, and head, your inward desiring, which is a lot of that, outward moving, and your reasoning, all unified together with the same purpose, same goal. So, so it's good that it's simple. It makes things clearer and obvious and easier to see and easier to function with. So our question is, well, if there's many different vices, you can all sorts of different crazy people out there. There's one set of virtues. It's just one. And this whole thesis here, this principle here is what is needed. What are the three fundamental aspects that are needed? Self, logos, dialectic, and self-being, to change them into virtues, bringing together our work from earlier in the series. But what if we made the virtues? Because even though there's one set of virtues, there are still many virtues. Can we go from a many to a unified, many to a one? Here, that's our question. Is there a single virtue? So, Socrates is saying, we stated not long ago that when the soul makes use of the body to investigate something, by the way, as I read, I'm skipping the unnecessary words because they're not needed. That's what the word, I'm repeating myself. Is it not the case then? That's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words to cover 2 in Greek. That we stated the following not long ago. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 words to take up for 3. On the other hand, 4 words to take up men. So I'm gonna skip the unnecessary as I read. Where I can, sometimes I forget and I get annoyed at myself, but let's go. So, we stated not long ago that when the soul makes use of the body to investigate something, either by seeing or hearing or through some other sense, or this is to investigate something through the perceptions of the body, at the same time she is dragged about by the body to things and never abiding according to the same. The whole thing that we want, same according to same. And so self wanders about and is confused and dizzy, as if self were drunk. Do I have a drunk sound effect? Maybe... that's not really drunk. Anyway, okay. All of those were the noises that you might hear when you're drunk. So you wander about confused and dizzy as if you're drunk, insofar as self comes in contact with those things, by all means. On the other hand, when she truly investigates self according to self, she passes into that realm. So we go into a different realm of reality, which is pure and eternal and deathless, and abides in the same way. Same words we saw repeated before. Always akin with self. She also becomes that whenever she arises into self, according to self, and goes out. Self both ceases from wandering and always remains according to the same in the same way. Certain state of being where you're always the same. Which makes sense. Pure, eternal, deathless. About those beings Again, we've been focused on the beings, our self-logos and dialectic applied to being, our questions about being. Insofar as she remains in contact with such beings. Oh, we contact it. We're in contact. We're touching it. We're there. We're there. And this experience or state of self is called phronesis. There we go. So this single virtue currency that we exchange the others for is a certain state of self called phronesis that comes when we are always remaining in contact with the beings. The upgrade of wisdom. So, go back to our text. So, is there a single virtue? Well, we are hypothesizing. We don't know yet because we're still trying to figure out this phronesis. It's still very complicated. It's not yet made simple, at least to me. Maybe it is for you. Phronesis seems to be the currency you trade that for. So our hypothesis we're playing within these triangles is we get there through those three terms: self, logos, dialectic applied to self-being. Is that what we do? Now let's take this hypothesis and take it back to the text and see if we can see the text in a different light. So again, we could say we are in a dialectic with the text. By doing these exercises, we are bouncing off the text. We can rub our understanding and work together with the text. It's a living thing. The game is a living thing with the text. So we want to get this state of self called phronesis. Of course, all the way through, he's been talking about what a philosopher seeks. They begin as a lover of learning, become a lover of wisdom, and then ultimately they're a lover of phronesis, and we seek truth and phronesis, according to Socrates' doctrine. It's a state of being, it's a state of the self, this phronesis thing we're after. Now, how do we get there? Well, we remain in contact, and we enter. What was it? Something about entering. We maybe it was earlier we said entering. Oh, here we go. Passes into. Let's highlight that. Pass into that realm. So how do we pass into that realm? Well, if you do pass into that realm, you will always remain in contact with the beings. Oh, great. How do we pass into that realm? Well, when you do, you'll cease from your wandering. And that makes you confused and dizzy as though you were drunk. Great. How do we pass into that realm? Well, when you do, you will no longer be dragged about by your body, having your soul being a slave to your body. Sound good? Oh, yeah. How do we pass into that realm? Well, when you do, you will be you'll be pure and eternal and deathless. Really? Wow. How do I do that then? Well, when you do, you will always be like self in that realm. Well, yeah. How do I do that then? Well, when you do, you'll be in a state, and it's a state called phronesis that we're really after. It's a more primary and divine and innate virtue that you trade the other virtues for. All of the work in the virtues have been for this. Yeah, I hear you, but how do I get into it? It's not written. What? Well, there's some clues like same in the same way or same according to the same. Self according to self, there's some clues there. But it's not said. Well, so now let's go back here and take with us this theory that we have developed and add it to it. What's our theory? Self-logos. Whoop, that's my pen. All of these triads come from going from the many or the division or the possible problems or injustices or vice to the unified or the hyparxis through self logos plus the dialectic directed to self being. Let's see if that fits. How do we get there? How do we get in contact with it? How do we pass into that realm? Well, we'll be in contact with the beings. Oh, so that checks out. Applied to self-being works. Self according to self, that sounds like the dialectic. Are there any other clues? Well, we did say earlier we can weave together the parts of the text with the sewing needle of infinite truth. So here's another passage where it says, not dragging around by our physical senses. So the idea of being dragged around by your physical body was repeated, but serves as a clue to help us solve the puzzle. Like going through a Resident Evil game or any video game, like, oh, that's that same painting that was in that other room or that other part of the game. They're tied together in a significant way. There's a puzzle to be solved. Dragging by your physical senses, that's the same thing. What's being said here? Maybe it will help illuminate the question of how do we enter in that realm. A person who will do this most perfectly approaches towards each being, where we want to go, with the self-understanding dianoia, without associating their sight with their understanding. Oh, some sort of exercise. So while you're walking, you can be looking at whatever on your walk, but you don't have to be looking at anything to do self-understanding. You can be doing the dialect. Interesting, it fits. Don't associate your senses with your physical senses with your reasoning, your logos-ing, but uses the understanding dianoia, that one purifies self by self. There's our same expression again, and tries to track down each of the unalloyed beings. Oh, that's from it later on as well. What was it? The soul must be eternal because it's unalloyed. It's not a composite material that would then dissolve. That was one of the proofs Socrates gives for the immortality of the soul. And being like being. Oh, like being. Self by self, again, liberating oneself from the eyes and ears in one word, a sum of the body, since it troubles the soul and does not enable her to acquire truth and mindfulness. There's our two big ones, and there's our word for phronesis. So a straight path with no deviations along the logos. There is a path that doesn't have deviations called the logos, but there is a shadow. So we're humans. We have the shadow as well. So, and he talks about the shadow here, passions, desires, fears, illusions, foolishness, and so on to follow if we don't follow that path. So this is the self-understanding. Using the logos. Self by self. And go up a section. You don't grab the selves of what selves? Self-justice, self-beauty, self-goodness, or any of the beings. You don't grasp it with your eyes, or even greatness or health or strength or the seer of any of the others, whatever self you're contemplating. But it's through that which is most true of selves contemplated. It's kind of focused, sustained concentration on our object that we're doing our dialectic on. Interesting, in order to have this fun game where you talk about how it affects others to others, you have to be focusing on it. You're naturally doing something called contemplation, which is fun and interesting and will level up your understanding, help you see better, and it's also not as boring as sitting your ass on a cushion in an ashram for 40 years, hoping that you'll have a spark. You're still focusing on your breath or on a candle or a picture of the guru or whatever, but you don't have to be bored. You can contemplate your object of focus in dialectic while doing something fun and interesting. It's a natural yoga. It's the innate yoga. So contemplation, sustained focus is sustained concentration into meditation, sustained meditation into contemplation. We have to prepare ourselves by and how do we do this contemplation? Well, most accurately dianoia-ing each self that you investigate. That person will approach the closest to the nous of the being. So there's our understanding applied to the selves. There's an object of focus as being the self beings, tick. investigate through the dianoia. What's the dianoia? Well, we talked about that being, where is it? We talked about how we were following a pattern without even realizing it. We started by asking the question, what is philosophy and how do we do it? That's definition and demonstration. Well, how do you define philosophy? Well, dianoia, to approach through this kind of contemplation separated from the body, nous, the intuitive knowing. We just read that part. Well, if understanding brings us, understanding brings us to nous, and this leads to that, then what exactly is this? Self-logos. Definition. Demonstrated through the dialectic. Oh, we've already done it. So we're weaving together the sections of the text, and we're also weaving together our own work together. Look at all this work we've done. Wow. Weaving it together with our snit. Sewing needle of infinite truths. That's our weapon. Sewing it together. So, where were we? Where are all our triangles? There they are. Triangles. So, have we seen it? Have we seen self-logos? Yes. Dianoia, self-logos and dialectic together. What do we direct it towards? Each of the selves, that self-being. And how do we focus on the self-being to get contemplation? Self according to self. That's the dialectic. So weaving together our own work and weaving together our own hypotheses that came from our own questions, which are sacks in our inventory, and also weaving together sections of the text, we have discovered. So this is page 15 that we are reading, 65E, and that ties in with where we are all the way down at too far. We're about halfway, I think. Yep, about halfway. Ties in with this. We want to dun 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 dun. Where's my go into that best realm, sure. Walk and talk in that way, sure. Enter into. Where's our enter into? We're just reading. Donkeys. Nothing else. Initiate. In the company with the good and mindful God. All different ways of saying entering into. I was sure that we got passed into that realm. Whoops. Oh no. Pass into that realm. Into. There you go. You can pass into that realm. Because that passing into that realm, that is pure, eternal, deathless, all adjectives going into our dialectic, is a state of self called phronesis. Yay. So our work and our theory, thank you, our work and our theory, sound effect, helped us to shine a light on how exactly we do enter into that. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so this is all one of those tricks in answering a question on whether or not our soul flitters away into the air. Socrates is saying, okay, in order to answer whether or not our soul is immortal, you have to understand the higher. So I'm going to use that as a metaphor. I'm going to answer that question by saying, is the soul more like the body or more like being and the self state of phronesis? And talking about being, I'm going to be talking about phronesis, how to enter into that realm, how it's the state called phronesis, how if you don't, you'll be drunk and have problems. I'm saying I'm giving you what you need to solve all of your problems while answering your direct question at the same time. It's freaking cool how he does that. He gives us everything while answering a more simple question. Like, you want to know about the soul? Okay, first we've got to understand the purpose of all life. And then we can say whether or not our soul is like that state of being and that state of phronesis. Isn't that cool? Amazing. I think that's so cool. Okay, the souls of the thoughtless become donkeys, and donkeys make the noise. Meow. Not that noise. If you have a cat that marries a goat, they'll make a donkey. I think that's how donkeys are born. Right, so to accomplish that separation from here and that purification. Right, self-imprisonment, we saw, is the greatest assistant of your own imprisonment. So clinging to your body imprisons yourself. Going around chasing your physical whims and desires and only looking through your physical senses is a self-imprisonment. You have to say that you have to be a lover of learning. And we're saying learning is this remembering of being through dianoia, which involves the self-logos and dialectic. It's the same thing over and over again. See how having this hypothesis, and solving this puzzle makes everything so clear. It's a magnificent. I can't do an Italian accent. It's a magnifique. It's a so good. Is it racist to do Italian accent? I don't know. I don't think so. I think they're fine. Lovers of learning recognize that when philosophy takes hold of their soul. Okay, here we're seeing more. She gently encourages her and tries to free her by revealing to her that if you search through the eyes, it's full of deceit. So this has been our puzzle today, the human puzzle. What is it? Well, hey, this seeing is fantastic and we can definitely use it to benefit ourselves and our friends and our community. But what about humanity? The human puzzle. How do we help introduce the self-logos as the next stage in human development from in the caveman way of thinking? Inside cave good, us versus them. Physical happens only, like the physical world we've been talking about is a back and forth of opposites. If that's your only guide for your thinking, if your only guide for your thinking is materialistic, like reductionism and empiricism and materialism, and by the way, taking the being out of the virtues, that's called stoicism. So there's so many different theories and philosophies that are constantly moving back and forth. But all these are just necessarily what happens if you don't have the philosophy. You don't have being. It makes sense that they would think according to what they know. It's not a blame game. It's simple. But how do we introduce philosophy? The human puzzle tries to free her by gently encouraging. There's a gentleness involved in this. Showing that the ears and the eyes and other senses are full of deceit. Like a mirage. Your eyes can trick you. Persuade people to withdraw from them those senses, insofar as you're not compelled, so far as you don't have to. Sure, if you're driving, look through the eyes, but as much as you don't have to, withdraw from them. Philosophy summons people to gather themselves together, self into self, the soul, and to trust only self and no other than self. The self-being that we're seeing is our paradigm that we trust. Any one of the real beings, self by self, that you would intellect self according to self. So the self-being is the paradigm, the model for truth. Consider other than being real, whatever you would consider through any other means, and they do not in any way lead to the truth. Since such things are sensible and visible, while that which self sees is intelligible and unseen. So it's intelligible, it is knowable, but it's unseen. So there's the two. Knowable through direct apprehension, self-ousia, and noesis, but unseen with the eyes. Therefore, the soul of the true philosopher thinks to herself that her deliverance, her separation, her freedom must not be opposed, and in this way keeps away from the pleasures and desires and pains and fears. Don't get wrapped up in your pleasures, or your pains, or your fears, or your desires. Put them aside. Just focus on being. Isn't that kind of freeing? We talk about how today's theme has been how simple philosophy is and how great it is that it makes it simple. Wouldn't life be simpler if you had this good reason from Socrates to not entertain your fears? Just do what's right and true and good and helpful and beneficial and makes you a daemon in this life and the next. So, well, again, it's the many to a one. We talked about the virtues bringing you one focus and how great that is. Well, how many fears can you have? Well, it's just limited by your imagination. But how many of these goals can you have? Just one. Don't chase but also don't chase your desires. Unless you're desiring this, in case, run full speed. As Socrates said, follow me as fast as you can. Pleasures and pains. Don't get wrapped up in them. Whatever you do, do it for this. Taking into account that whenever any soul is involved in excessive pleasure or fear or pain or desire, then she will not only expect such harm as would believe happen from those things, such as by being sick or through some expended desires, the harms that come from being sick or overindulging, but that which is the greatest and worst and most extreme of them all. Now that's the whole sentence. What is the greatest and worst and most extreme harm? What is this, O Socrates? Since self also takes no account that this takes place. What is this greatest and worst and most extreme harm of them all? That every time, let's nail this down, it seems to be Socrates is using some big words here. Greatest and worst and most extreme harm that comes from excessive pleasure, fear, pain, or desire. Pleasure, pain, fear, and desire. Right? Pleasure and pain are in the immediate. Fears are the pains that you fear in the future. Desires are the pleasures you desire in the future, right? It's very, it's those two opposites of experience in the human form. Either now or in the future. What's the greatest thing that can what's the worst thing? Of a sound drop that's worst. What's the worst thing? The greatest and worst and most extreme of them all is that every time a human soul feels excessive pleasure or pain towards something, at the same time she is also necessarily, he's dropping the big N word. Oh, I shouldn't say that. I didn't mean it that way. Holy crap. Necessary has been what we've been seeing as what should change our mind in the dialectic. Necessary and beautiful. So he's dropping the big necessity word. She's also necessarily led to believe that this experience, which she feels excessively, must be the most clear and most real. But this does not happen to be in this way. But it's not true. For these especially belong to the visible world. The greatest and worst and most extreme harm is to believe that what is most clear and real. Something in the physical world. It's not. Now, and such an experience, a soul is bound to the body, most especially. It binds you to the body. Now, what's interesting is we've got another duad here. Up until now, he's been talking about a duad that we seek in philosophy of truth and phronesis. Talked about truth being that contemplation of the real beings, and phronesis being the upgrade of the virtues. Because not just do we want to not just experience it like a one-off, like a trip, We want to integrate it with what we've been working on ourselves through the virtues. But the virtues are themselves good on their own because it makes things more simple and unified. Courage is to follow the logos. What the logos says is true in spite of those 4 things: pleasure, pain, fear, and desire. So again, it's great on its own, but it's also great because when we do experience truth, and you define truth as that realm of being, we can integrate it and we can upgrade our virtues to the single virtue and go from the many virtues to the one. And you call that the initiation. And we need to have that when we die. Otherwise, we will have not done our work here. We'll have to reincarnate again, or we'll end up in the mud in the afterworld. So, truth and phronesis. Apprehension of the being and the integration into our learning that can last beyond our lifetime, making us most rational. The 3 questions we mentioned earlier, where are we going? We're answering. Where do we come from? Someplace where we knew, but had to somehow do some work to purify our false beliefs about self-being or the self, and also perfect our logos. So we know where we're going, we know where we came from, we know there's a cyclical process through these arguments. But what are we doing while we're here? Well, we talked about this phronesis, a kind of learning and integration of that experience from philosophy into our virtues, giving us the single virtue, doesn't lose its power, and we will always have it, even when we're in the realm of being. So a kind of learning that goes beyond our lifetime and beyond this level of reincarnation. So what we should be doing while we're here. Doing what we need, and we saw self-logos and dialectic applied to being, self-being, or self-usia, which is a purification and not being interested in our pleasures, pains, fears, or desires, or anything through the physical senses, so that we can exercise those things in the most pure way, making us most like contemplate most the realm of being, most like the realm of being, and function most like a daemon. That's what we're supposed to be doing here, but also it's a learning that we can take with us. So it's paideia is the word, the spiritual learning that extends beyond this lifetime. So this truth and phronesis kind of helps us with our 3 questions of where do we come from, where we're going, and what should we be doing in our time here, making us rational. But now he's giving us a new one. He substituted truth and phronesis for clear and real. Now, truth or being is also that which is real, reality itself. But instead of phronesis, we have something called clarity. So there's 2 possibilities here that we can take as possible questions. These go into our question stack. Is clarity a descriptor if we can match? Let's get it. So we are on 83C. Took another question here. Let's go down to some here. Let's go here. 83C. Let's go purple. 83C. Question. Which is what? Too many. Question. We go from truth and phronesis to clear and real. Now, we can already switch this around because we know that reality is tied to truth through being. Truth is of being, reality of being is of being, and this is an axiom. If A is equal to B and C is equal to B, then A and B are equal. That's an axiom. That's also used in math and stuff. So truth is of the realm of being, or self-usia. Reality, the realm of being, is what's real. and eternal and deathless and immortal and pure and all those adjectives that goes into your dialectic. I hope you're having fun with. And therefore, we have a question. Is this word clear a clue for our idea of phronesis? Is the state of phronesis, a staying on being, clear? Or, let's go, or is there a different reason? Is it unrelated? Or is he changing? Or is Socrates introducing a new idea? In which case, what is real is connected to being. And we've said, well, hang on a second, applied to the virtues, so long as you've developed the virtues, which is what? The virtues require logos and dialectic. So you have being and logos and dialectic, the three that's needed for our hypothesis of triangles. But if you have all three of those, you can go from not just a one-off flash in the pan experience of being, but you can go to the virtue of self-phronesis. So being and self-phronesis could be on the same level, or commensurate is the word for that, phronesis. But then, what does clear refer to? What is the equivalent to the state? Sorry, the realm. So we have, it's going for color. What is the realm? And what is the state of self? Or state of enlightenment, you could say. But the word in the text was state of self. That is associated. If being and phronesis is to do with what's real, what is the realm and state of self to do with what's clear? Is there a higher realm beyond being? And is there therefore a higher state of self to have the always having of that state? In the same way, always having the wisdom of being is the initiation that upgrades wisdom to self-phronesis. Is there an equal kind of always having or retaining or a paideia kind of learning that is necessary for our incarnation kind of learning associated to a realm different to being, or maybe beyond being, that is its equivalent to phronesis? That is a big question. I like that question. I think that's a neato question.
Wow.
And Owen Wilson's whole family thinks so. So, let's finish this section here for today. So, every time a human soul feels excessive pain or pleasure towards something, you will be led to believe that that which you are feeling excessively is most clear, and most real. But this is not the truth, because they are in the visible realm, right? If so, in such an experience as this, the soul is, by that experience, the soul is bound to the body. Most especially. How so, says Zebes? Because her every pleasure and pain nails her to the body. We talk about nailing things down through the logos, but this is the opposite. Nailing to the body, as it were, by keeping self distracted and welding them together. They also make her corporeal, and so she also believes the things that the body says must be true. It must be true. It's the most pleasure. Wow, this must be real. addiction. Oh, this must be true. It's so painful. I'm in so much pain. Psychological torment, suffering, addiction and suffering. For out of this shared belief that the selves that she welcomes from the body, the things of the body, I think she necessarily comes to share the body same ways as the same food. You're feeding by getting wrapped up in the physical senses, pleasures, pains, or in the future, fears and desires. You are feeding your soul bad food that will weld you to your suffering, your vices, your lack of development, nailing you to the corporeal. She can never enter into Hades in a pure way. She's quite full of the body upon leaving, so that she soon falls back again into another body. There's our reincarnation idea that we've been talking about. And is naturalized into it. That's interesting. Let's nail down this word. Speaking of nailing down. Just as a seed that is sown, and because of these things, she cannot be part of the communion with the divine company and the pure and the uniform. So he's not only telling us this is the significance if you feed your body that way. You're feeding your soul through the senses. Pleasures and pains specifically. And the biggest problem, and this is the greatest problem, you think it's most clear and real. And he's also telling us what we, not only the negative that follows, but he's giving us what we need to solve the positive. What do we actually want? So this is our 3 questions we mentioned at the start of today. What do we seek? What do we need to become most rational? What do we want to do while we're here? Based on where we come from and where we're going. We want, according to Socrates, we can unpack this, we want to be in communion with the divine company and of the pure and uniform. We want to be pure and uniform. We talked about how great philosophy was because it makes things so uniform, makes things so simple. Our whole thing over here, all of these triangles is a movement from the many, where are the triangles? A many to the simple or uniform. Virtues mean to be uniform. All of these moving from into the uniform. But he's also saying that makes you pure, your soul pure by being uniform. And also by doing that through the self-logos and dialectic, again applied to self-being, you prepare yourself to be in contact and communion with, to enter the realm of, to enter into the communion of the divine company. Now, I think that looks like the divine. So I don't know if company's being added because it looks like Daon. So let's nail down whether this is divine company or just to define the divine. And also communion has a religious connotation. Could be an aspect of the translator. So we've got 3 words let's nail down. Naturalized. You fall back into another body and you become naturalized. So we're talking about incarnation, reincarnation. And so just to be sure we have the right word, let's throw it into our translator. Emphieste. Emphieste means, let's bring it up. Implant. To grow in. To be rooted in. So yeah, to plant it in them, in my soul. So here, to become naturalized is to be rooted. And that makes sense because this sentence goes, naturalized into it just as a seed. So to be rooted and implanted into the soul, into the body. We don't want that. Okay? So let's add a note. Implanted or rooted. So right, don't be moved by your body, by the pleasures, pains, and fears, desires, otherwise you're rooted. Which is a funny joke for an Australian person. Okay, communion. Let's find what communion is in the Greek. Again, taking some extra time, nailing it down, that's part of the game. Synousias. Synousia. There's our synousia, which is a ousia, but to do with something called sin, which was a suffix to be together with, intercourse with, physical with, in a concrete sense. Right, so we said, so let's just get the start of the word. Also put it in a Wiktionary. The etymology of the word synousia is a kind of ousia. Yes, coming together, copulation, coupling, sexual intercourse. So it's a kind of ousia, but it's of two different things. Addition, yes, addition. Plus. So, see what it says here. Woof. Huh. That's in company with, together with, endued with, of things accompanying. Right, so it's a composite ousia. This is interesting because along with, in company with, together. Okay, this is great. So one of the arguments that we've been getting for the fact that the soul remains even after we die is it's not composite. It's not combined with other materials. And therefore it's most like being. So we're smuggling in the study of being while we do this. And he's saying, hey, this communion is an ousia with something. Composite, you're adding. So we want to be an ousia along with the divine company. Now let's see if this is divine company or just the divine. This word is the. Let's make sure. To means the. What? I think. Can help us there. So let's make sure that to means the. Yeah, the definitive. And if it doesn't, and you're a Greek scholar, please add what to means in chat. I think it means the. Let's get this one. The divine company. Phaedo. It just sounds like the divine. Yeah, God. So, what do we end up with? We ended up with, we are to become rooted in our body and not communion. So, a joining ousia. Let's highlight that and make a note. or additive ousia. The joining from the etymology addition and plus ousia. So it's a joining with God. With the God. So that's what we want. Now, the God. So we're given a clue, we're given a puzzle here. Why does truth and phronesis become clear and real? And then why does it become a joining with the realm of the beings, plural, with yes, the mindful God. Interesting. So we talked about being with gods and better men, and also to be with good daemons, and we also talked about uniting with the ideas or the beings. But now we have a single God who maybe has the quality of phronesis. Communion has a Christian connotation, so I don't want to use that word. A joining, if we're not rooted to the body, we can, if we practice in this way, we will be able to do that which we seek, which we can get, which is a great thing. This is what we've been talking about all day today. Isn't it great that we can reach our goals? Isn't it great that we can understand our problems? Isn't it great that things can be made simple? And even if we have a human puzzle, we can understand it. It's how to communicate this. And apparently it has to be in a gentle, encouraging way. Encouraging, gently, persuasive, reveal. So that's how we communicate this. But for us, who are already in the game,
you're a wizard, Harry.
What do we want? We want to join with the God. Pure and uniform. So if a retaining of the apprehension of the beings is a virtue, state, let's go state. Here we go. So passing into that realm that is pure, eternal, deathless, remaining in contact with such beings, plural, gives a state called phronesis that we saw 39. So there's our truth and phronesis. Then he introduces the idea of clarity and real. And he's gone from self-phronesis being the state. Let's bring up our puzzle. Our puzzle. Dun, 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 dun. So truth and phronesis, we can add more to our puzzle now, is to do with, what color? Green. Is to do with the beings. Clear and... Oh yeah, so this is the first question. Is it the same? Or, what is real is being and phronesis connected to beings. Joined with beings. Does clear refer to a kind of realm and a kind of state that we have to find, which is joined, Joined, with, what was the text? The God. the God, pure and uniform. This is the puzzle. Because he's gone from many to one. Meaning there should be a realm equivalent to being or beings and a state. To do with this idea of clarity. Going from many to the one. And now, that's an interesting question because it brings us back to our hypothesis, our puzzle that we have discovered in the text and giving rise to our hypothesis. Okay, so we talked about philosophy is going from sticks and people. That was the whole logos of learning we've just gone through. Beautiful person 1 or 2, or beautiful stick 1 and 2, to beauty itself or self-beauty. But we have a question, because self-beauty can go along with self-justice. Over here. Self-justice. And other beings. And they have a hyparxis in self-ousia. A hyparxis, but also contains the other beings. Is there, therefore, a way of moving from beings or the divine, the gods and the better masters and the people who've completed their life here, to the God, who is pure and uniform? That's our puzzle. Anything here? Is there a realm beyond being that goes from a kind of many in the realm of being? Let's make it. So make it green so it's a puzzle. So we have the beings. Oops. Beings. And that's also to do with beings down there to the God. What's that? We have some things about it, so we can develop a dialectic to have some clues. It's pure. Oh, it's the pure. The pure and uniform. So we've gone from beings that are pure but it also has a quality. We saw earlier in the text we have the single God which has which is, let's find it in the text again. We did see another time where he talked about the God. The phronesis God. Where is it? Yes, we go. Company with the good and the phronesis God. So here we have the good. So we have pure, we have goodness, etc. to the good. And it was phronesis God, the good and the phronesis. It doesn't say that, it says phronesis. This is our puzzle. So even this God can have that state of phronesis, but it's also the pure. So it goes from examples of pure to the pure. And is this also the state of clarity? If this is what's real, is this what's clear? So these are our questions we're going to end with today. Interesting puzzles come to light. Is there a realm equivalent to being and a state equivalent to self-phronesis applied to beyond being, beyond the real, applied to the God? If these are the gods, plural, or purities, plural, what is the God? In what ways does it have phronesis? Because the state of being here is a state of phronesis. And is this a state of clarity? If this is experienced as a brilliant light, is this experienced as clarity? I'm not sure, but some good questions. So, and this brings us in the text back to where we were in the text last time. So next time we're going to read on, but we've seen a lot more. We've unpacked some, for the sake of beings, the ones who love learning and in order. Oh, there's lots there. So it's great that we went through it again, and it's great that we uncovered some great questions like this. This is a big one because there may be a state of enlightenment beyond even being. And it's good that we saw it in the text, and we're good that we were reading it with such integrity and repeating it and reading it in this kind of way that we're learning to read. Socrates is giving us what we need to read to discover questions and discover answers and have insights, but he's also giving us what we need to discover what it means to read, which is what we're doing here. A lot of fun. I hope you like those questions. Again, like and subscribe to the video. It helps the algorithm. And you can join the Discord. It should be linked below. You can find the text for free below. You can watch along on Twitch in real time if you want. There's a link below. And also you can support the channel by becoming a patron. And there should be a link below for that too. If not, there will be one soon. So I really appreciate anybody, the community and those who are supporting the channel and the quest to become self-usia. The quest to become, what do we say it was? Good daemons, which is not only for ourselves, but for the whole world. Becoming a light for the whole world by seeking our light. The purpose of all things we are fulfilling, which is for us and also for everyone. So thank you for those on the quest and who are supporting the quest and the channel. I will see you next time.